It was a crisp morning in Santa Barbara, the air fresh and invigorating as the sun began to rise. At a private tarmac, a polished Gulfstream G650 stood ready for its journey to Newark Liberty. The crew was already on board preparing for a quick and exclusive flight. Just then a woman arrived without any fanfare, no red carpet, no security entourage, and certainly no designer luggage. Dressed in simple black joggers, a faded hoodie, and well-worn sneakers, she seemed unfazed by her surroundings. Her name was Dr. Emily Carter, but no one uttered her name just yet. Inside the cabin, Sarah, the lead flight attendant, noticed Emily from her post. Leaning toward the co-pilot, she raised an eyebrow and asked, "Did we have a last-minute passenger that wasn't cleared?" The co-pilot shook his head, looking puzzled. "Not that I'm aware of." Emily stepped onto the plane with an air of familiarity, as if she had done this countless times before. Sarah, already halfway down the aisle, approached her with a voice dripping in sugary authority.
"Excuse me, miss, but this jet is reserved for a private charter." Without looking up from her phone, Emily replied nonchalantly, "I know." "I'm not sure you do," Sarah insisted, blocking Emily's path. "This is Flight 221 to Newark, chartered by Lux Aviation for a confidential client." Finally, tucking her phone into her pocket, Emily met Sarah's gaze. "I'm the client." Sarah struggled to contain a smirk, her skepticism palpable. "Right. Do you have any kind of confirmation? Because I don't see it." Just then, another flight attendant, Jake, called out from the galley. "She's on the manifest, top of the list." Sarah froze for a moment, her face betraying her confusion. "I see." As Emily walked past her, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere, a tension that seemed to thicken the air. But Sarah wasn't ready to let it go. She whispered to Jake, "Something feels off. There's no way she's who she claims to be." If Sarah had chosen to let it go, the story might have ended there. Instead, she made a choice to press on. Watching Emily settle into her seat, crossing her legs and scrolling through her phone, Sarah felt increasingly unsettled.
The cabin was almost empty, save for an older couple seated at the back, both immersed in their newspapers, oblivious to the brewing tension. The engines had yet to start. There was still time. Taking a deep breath, Sarah straightened her skirt and approached Emily once more, this time leaning in slightly. "Ma'am, I need to ask again. Do you have identification? I just want to verify something." Emily looked up slowly, her calm demeanor unwavering. "Why am I being questioned twice when your colleague already confirmed I'm on the list?" "Standard protocol," Sarah replied, her tone now more flat and businesslike.
"No, it's not," Emily countered sharply. "I've flown Lux Aviation 12 times this year. I don't recall standard protocol involving interrogation while boarding my own plane." Jake chimed in from the galley. "Sarah, we're cleared. The ground team just confirmed it. Let it go." But Sarah wasn't having it. Moving closer, she lowered her voice. "Look, I'm just trying to protect our clients. This plane is chartered under high security clearance. We don't get people showing up in sweats and hoodies without it raising red flags." Emily blinked, unimpressed. "So the issue is my clothing?" "I didn't say that," Sarah replied defensively. "You didn't have to," Emily shot back. The air around them crackled with tension as Sarah took one more step forward, her voice tinged with authority. "You can either show me who you really are, or wait outside while we sort this out." Then, in a moment that would change everything, Sarah reached for Emily's arm, not roughly, but with an air of entitlement. Emily instinctively pulled back. "Don't touch me." That should have been the end of it.
But Sarah's pride overshadowed her training. She took another step, muttering, "I'm not doing this today," and then slapped Emily across the face. It was a quick, sharp motion, enough to turn heads and freeze time. Jake gasped, and the older couple looked up in disbelief, their newspapers forgotten. Emily stood still, one hand pressed to her cheek, her expression unreadable. The shock of the moment hung heavily in the air, settling into the chests of everyone on board. Jake was the first to break the silence.
What are you doing? I was just trying to get her to leave, Sarah stammered, her bravado fading. She owns this plane, Jake said incredulously. What? Sarah's face drained of color as the realization hit her. She's Dr. Emily Carter, Jake continued, the new CEO of Vanguard Systems. She's the majority stakeholder in Lux Aviation. This is her jet. Just like that, the power dynamics shifted dramatically, but the damage had already been done. Sarah felt the ground fall from beneath her feet.
Wait, she's the CEO? Jake nodded slowly, still processing the events. Yeah, Emily Carter, PhD in aerospace engineering, worth over $2 billion. You just laid hands on the woman who owns your company. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Emily remained motionless, her demeanor calm and composed, almost surgical, as if she were observing an experiment rather than participating in it. You assaulted a passenger, Jake said, his voice tight. You need to sit down right now. Sarah's eyes darted around the cabin, searching for support that wasn't coming. The older couple had resumed their reading, their hands trembling as they flipped pages. The co-pilot emerged quietly from the cockpit, arms crossed, his expression concerned. Emily turned and walked back to her seat, sitting down slowly, smoothing her hoodie as she pulled her phone from her pocket once again. The ordinary nature of her actions felt jarring against the backdrop of the chaos that had just unfolded. Jake leaned closer to Emily, his voice quiet. Do you want to delay the flight? We can report it, escalate. No, Emily replied simply. We're flying. Jake glanced at Sarah. She should be removed. Emily didn't look up. No, let her stay. Everyone was taken aback. Are you sure? She's going to sit on this flight like she didn't just make the biggest mistake of her career, Emily said coolly. That'll be worse than any headline. Jake nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Copy. As the engines began to roar softly, the pilots conducted their pre-flight checks, and Jake returned to the galley, his body tense. Sarah remained frozen near the front for a few moments longer before quietly taking her jump seat. The cabin fell into an uneasy silence, thick with unspoken words and regrets. As the plane prepared for takeoff, an uncomfortable tension hung in the air. Emily sat calmly in her seat, scrolling through her phone, while Sarah fidgeted nervously, stealing glances at her. The older couple at the back of the cabin whispered to each other, their curiosity piqued by the unexpected drama unfolding before them. The engines hummed softly, and the plane began to taxi down the runway. Feeling the weight of her earlier actions, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She glanced at Emily, who remained composed, seemingly unfazed by the awkwardness of the situation. Just as the plane reached the end of the runway, Sarah made a decision that would seal her fate. Taking a deep breath, she approached Emily once more, her confidence wavering. I'm sorry, but I truly need to verify your identity, she insisted, her voice a mix of authority and anxiety. Can you please show me your identification? Emily raised an eyebrow, her patience wearing thin. Is there a reason I'm being questioned again when your colleague confirmed I'm on the list? Standard procedure, Sarah replied, her tone losing its sugary sweetness. She was aware that she was walking a fine line, but her instincts told her to press on. This is a high-security flight, and I need to ensure everything is in order. Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, frustration flashing across her face. So, my clothing is a problem? Is that what this is about? No, that's not what I meant, Sarah stammered, her defensiveness creeping in, but Emily pressed on, her voice steady. You're treating me like I don't belong here because of how I look. I've flown with Lux Aviation numerous times.
You don't know anything about me. Sarah felt the heat rising in her cheeks but refused to back down. I'm just trying to do my job, she replied curtly, her tone sharp. But if you can't provide proof, I can't let you stay on this flight. The air crackled with tension as the two women stared each other down, the flight attendants and passengers around them holding their breath, sensing the impending confrontation. In that moment, Sarah felt her resolve hardening, convinced she was in the right, unaware of how drastically she was about to misjudge the situation.
The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with tension, and a suffocating silence fell over everyone as Sarah and Emily continued their standoff. Just as Sarah prepared to insist on her authority one more time, Jake, the younger flight attendant, broke away from the galley, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Sarah, wait! She's on the manifest!" he exclaimed, his voice cutting through the mounting tension. "What do you mean?" Sarah replied, her voice laced with confusion. Jake hurried to check the list on his tablet, his fingers tapping frantically. "I mean, she's not just a random passenger. She's Dr. Emily Carter, the new CEO of Vanguard Systems. She owns this plane." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Sarah's face drained of color as the shock hit her. "What?" she stammered, her mind racing to process the implications of her actions.
"Yeah, she's the majority stakeholder in Lux Aviation," Jake continued, looking back and forth between Sarah and Emily, who remained composed, her expression unreadable. "You just slapped the owner of the company that pays your salary." The realization sunk in, and Sarah felt as if the ground had fallen away beneath her. A cold sweat broke out across her forehead as she glanced at Emily, who was still sitting quietly, one hand gently resting on her cheek where Sarah had struck her. The cabin felt like it was holding its breath, and the older couple in the back exchanged worried glances, their newspapers forgotten. I didn't know," Sarah stuttered, her confidence evaporating as she took a step back, her demeanor shifting from authoritative to panicked. Emily finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "So it seems you've made a very serious mistake." Her eyes locked onto Sarah's, conveying a mix of disappointment and disbelief. "I didn't react in anger because I know that this kind of behavior comes from a place of ignorance. But this isn't over." Jake, still reeling from the revelation, stepped forward, his expression a mix of concern and anger. "You need to sit down, Sarah. You've just assaulted a passenger, an important one at that." As the realization of her actions began to sink in, the cabin remained silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. Emily turned her gaze away, returning to her phone, the cool composure she maintained contrasting sharply with the turmoil in the cabin. The atmosphere had shifted irrevocably, and the flight had only just begun as the plane climbed into the sky. A palpable silence enveloped the cabin.
Sarah sat in her jump seat, her heart racing as she replayed the shocking events in her mind. She could hardly believe what had just happened. Next to her, Jake busied himself with the cabin preparations, glancing at her occasionally, his expression a mix of concern and disbelief. Emily, meanwhile, remained seated, her posture relaxed, as if the earlier confrontation had never occurred. She pulled out a notebook from her bag, flipping it open to jot down notes, her focus unwavering. The older couple in the back exchanged whispers, their eyes darting between Sarah and Emily, both clearly unsettled by the tension still hanging in the air. For the next 30 minutes, not a single word was spoken. The hum of the engines filled the void, but it did little to ease the discomfort that had settled among the crew and passengers. Sarah felt the weight of her mistake pressing down on her, each passing moment amplifying her anxiety. She glanced at Emily, her calm demeanor only fueled Sarah's guilt and frustration. How could she have misjudged someone so important? Jake, trying to break the ice, busied himself folding napkins and organizing the galley. He stole glances at Sarah, who was visibly shaken, her hands trembling slightly as she fidgeted with her apron. The older couple, still trying to read their newspapers, occasionally looked up, their hands shaking as they turned the pages, unable to ignore the palpable tension. Finally, Sarah could no longer bear the silence. She stood up abruptly and approached Emily, her heart pounding. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, forcing a smile that felt brittle and insincere. Emily looked up, her expression neutral.
Do you think I want something from your hands? The words cut through the air and Sarah flinched, a wave of embarrassment washing over her. I thought I should offer, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily's gaze didn't waver. You thought you could slap me and then bring me a drink as if everything is fine. I didn't mean to, Sarah started, but Emily interrupted her. You did exactly what you meant to do. The real issue is that you thought I wouldn't respond. The silence returned, heavier than before.
Sarah stood still, absorbing Emily's words, realizing the depth of her misjudgment. The tension was suffocating and she felt the weight of her actions crashing down on her as the flight continued, the cabin filled with unspoken regrets and a growing realization that this moment would change everything. As the flight continued, Sarah sat back in her jump seat, her thoughts swirling in a chaotic mix of fear and regret. Each glance at Emily, who was now engrossed in her notebook, sent pangs of anxiety through her. The silence between them was deafening, a stark reminder of the power dynamics that had shifted dramatically. Sarah wrestled with the weight of her mistake, knowing she had crossed a line that could cost her everything. Finally, unable to bear the tension any longer, Sarah rose from her seat and approached Emily again, her heart racing. "Dr. Carter," she began, her voice shaky but determined. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" Emily looked up, her expression unreadable. "I'm listening," she replied, her tone calm but firm. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steeled herself. "I owe you an apology. What happened back there? It was completely uncalled for. I judged you based on your appearance, and I'm truly sorry for that." Emily's gaze remained steady. "You're right. You didn't see me for who I am. You saw only who you expected me to be." Sarah felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to make assumptions. I was just trying to do my job, but I let my biases cloud my judgment." "I understand," Emily replied. "But it's crucial to recognize that your actions have consequences. What if I had been just an ordinary person flying for the first time? Would you have treated me the same way?" The question hung in the air, and Sarah struggled to find the words. I don't know. I guess I just thought," Emily interrupted gently. "You thought I was powerless because of how I looked. That's the problem." Feeling vulnerable, Sarah nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I see that now. I know I messed up and I'll have to face the consequences. But I want you to know that I'm committed to changing." Emily's expression softened slightly.
Change starts with acknowledging your mistakes, but it must be followed by actions that reflect that understanding. Sarah swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of the conversation. "I promise to do better. I'll work on myself and ensure I never make that mistake again." With a slight nod, Emily replied, "You'll have the chance to prove that. But remember, accountability is key." As Sarah returned to her seat, she felt a flicker of hope. The silence that had once felt so oppressive began to dissipate, replaced by a new understanding that could lead to growth and change for both of them.
As the plane soared through the clouds, the atmosphere began to shift. Sarah sat in her jump seat, her heart heavy with the weight of her earlier actions. She knew that the consequences of her behavior were inevitable. In her mind, she replayed the conversation with Emily, feeling a mix of remorse and determination to change. The flight continued in a tense silence, but a newfound awareness lingered among the crew. When the plane finally landed at Newark Liberty, the tension in the cabin remained palpable. Emily gathered her belongings, her demeanor calm and composed despite the chaos that had unfolded earlier. As she exited the aircraft, she made her way to the private conference room where Captain Roberts was waiting for her. He greeted her with a serious expression, sensing the gravity of the situation. "Dr. Carter, I just spoke with HQ," Captain Roberts said, his voice steady but filled with concern. We need to discuss what happened on the flight. There's no grey area here. Sarah's actions were unacceptable. Emily nodded, her resolve unwavering. I'm not surprised, but it's not enough to simply address this incident. We need to implement real change within the company. Captain Roberts raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I'm not just a passenger. I'm the majority shareholder of Lux Aviation, Emily replied, her voice firm. This plane is registered under my holding company. We need to take immediate action to address the underlying issues of bias and discrimination in our company culture. Captain Roberts sat up straighter, recognizing the importance of her words. What do you propose? Emily opened the folder she had brought with her, filled with plans for new policies and training programs aimed at promoting inclusivity and accountability. I was planning to roll this out next quarter, but I think it's time we push it forward immediately. We need comprehensive retraining for all staff members and a clear policy on how we handle bias in the workplace. Immediately, he reiterated, nodding in agreement. You have my full support. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, Sarah anxiously awaited the outcome of Emily's meeting. She sat quietly, reflecting on her actions and the lessons she had learned. The weight of her mistake loomed large, but she was determined to take responsibility. When Emily returned to the cabin, her expression was calm yet resolute. As she walked past Sarah, she paused for a moment and said, "This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about creating a better environment for everyone." Sarah felt a surge of determination. She knew she had a long road ahead, but she was ready to embrace the challenge. The flight may have ended, but the journey toward accountability and change was just beginning. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself sitting alone in a training room at Luxy Aviation's headquarters, the weight of her recent experiences still heavy on her shoulders. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, completely stripped of her usual uniform. The room was filled with other employees, all there to participate in a mandatory training program focused on implicit bias and workplace conduct. As she watched the introductory video, Sarah felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The video featured real stories from passengers and crew members who had faced discrimination and bias. One passenger shared his experience of being treated like a nuisance simply because of his appearance, while a pilot recounted being questioned in his own hangar. The stories resonated deeply with Sarah, making her reflect on her own behavior and the assumptions she had made about Emily. As the video concluded, a familiar face appeared on the screen. Emily. She spoke directly to the camera, her demeanor calm and authoritative.
"If you're watching this, it means you're part of a company that I now lead," she began, "and with that comes the responsibility to hold each other to a higher standard." Sarah sat up straighter, her focus sharpening. Emily continued, "It's not about perfection, it's about accountability. Every day ask yourself, did I treat someone with respect and dignity today? Did I challenge my own assumptions?" The words struck a chord within Sarah. She realized that this was not just a training session, it was
She had the opportunity to change not just for herself, but for her colleagues and the passengers they served. Meanwhile, across the country on another flight, a young woman boarded a jet in casual attire, much like Emily had. This time, the flight attendant, a seasoned professional, greeted her warmly, saying, "Welcome aboard, Dr. Spencer. Would you like sparkling water or still?" The interaction was free of tension, testament to the changes that Emily and the company were striving for. As Sarah reflected on her own mistakes and the path ahead, she felt a sense of hope. She was determined to embrace this opportunity for growth and to ensure that her future interactions would be guided by respect and understanding. The lessons learned from that fateful flight would not be forgotten. Rather, they would serve as a foundation for a more inclusive and equitable workplace. Though the journey of transformation would take time, Sarah knew that meaningful change had begun, not just for herself, but for everyone at Lux Aviation. The silence after the slap had been uncomfortable, but it had also opened the door to a new beginning.